Daily Chumash. Rabbi. A little bit longer today. Okay. Rabbi, page 21. The land of Israel. We're going to talk about today the fight of the 4 kings and the 5 kings and Avram saving his nephew Lot from the 4 kings. Okay. What happened in the days of Amraphel, the king of Shinar, Aryech Melech Lasser, and the days of the king of Shinar, of Aryoch, king of Lasar, Kidla Omer, the king of Melech Elam, the king of Elam, Vesido Melech Goyim, Vesido, the king of Goyim. Rashi. Amraphel is a nickname for Nimrod, who we know already is a bad guy. Because Amr Avram Pearl take because he told Avram, fall into the fiery furnace.
Right.
Amar Paul, he said, fall into it.
When did he do this to Abraham?
This is not explicit in the Chumash. This is from the Midrash.
Okay.
Because Avram was really only introduced at 75 years old. The story of the fiery furnace happened when he's more like 40, in his 40s or something. 40s or 50s. It's known from Midrash. Okay, Melech Goyim. Tidal is the king of Goyim. The name Goyim is a very generic name. It means nations, right? It's not like a particular tribe. Because it was a conglomerate of many nations and places. And they appointed a man named Tidal as their king. So it was like Syria, different tribes, and they made one king or something. Beis. Also, Milcham as Bera Melzem as Birsha Melech Hamayra. Those 4 kings waged war with Bera, king of Siddim, Birsha, the king of Amorah, Shinov, Melech Adma, Shinov, the king of Adma, Shemever, Melech Tzavayim, Shemer, the king of Tzavayim, Melech Bela is Hitzair. Gimel. I'm sorry, Beis. Bera was his nickname. Why was he called Bera? These are all like, like royal names. I don't think it was their, birth certificate name. He's called Bera because he's Ra L'Shemaim Ra L'Briyas. He was bad boy. Bad to Hashem, 2 bad, double bad.
Right.
2 bads, one to God, one to people. Birsha, he was called because he arose in the ranks, Birshai, with his wickedness. His Machiavellian wickedness, how he rose to the top. Did I pronounce that right? Machiavellian, is that correct?
No.
What's Machiavellian?
Yes.
Okay. So he rose to the top with his wickedness. Shinov. Son of Ishmael. It was his nickname because he hated his father in heaven. These are the 5 kings. Shemever. He was called because some aver. He put on wings to fly and to leap and to rebel against Hashem. Bela. That was the name of the city of that king. It doesn't say the name of Tzoar, I guess. No, it doesn't say the name of the 5th king. It just says that the last king was the king of Bela, which is also called Tzoar. Okay. Let me tissues. All right. Gimel. Kol Ela Chavru El Emek HaSidim. They all had convened in the valley of Siddim. Hu Yamelech, which later became the Dead Sea, the Salt Sea. Emek HaSidim, they all convened. Why called Siddim, the valley, because there are a lot of fields in this valley. And there's also many Agadic explanations. Hu Yamelech, this is the Salt Sea, meaning later on, after time, the sea flowed into this valley and it became the Salt Sea. The Medrash says that the rocks surrounding it split and streams flowed into it. The difference is, was there a lake or a sea that ended up just flowing further into this valley, but it was existing lake, or was it the rocks burst and sub underground springs started flowing to make this valley into a lake, into a sea? That's what he's saying. They say in the bottom that the reason Rashi brings the Medrash because it's better grammatically. That this Emek Hasidim, this very valley itself, it became a lake. Not that a sea, another sea came into it, which it could make sense, but it's like that this valley eventually burst, the rocks, the fissures burst, and it became a salt sea. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
How does Gomorrah all that tie in?
I don't know.
Did you ever hear that?
Yeah, but maybe that's when it happened. Dalit. So for 12 years, these 5 kings had to serve Kidl Omer, who was one of the kings. But the 13th year, they rebelled. They had to pay tribute for 12 years. Rashi says, the 12 years, these 5 kings had served Kidl Omer. Hey, in the 14th year, Kidl Omer and the kings who were with him came. In the 14th year, Kidl Omer and the kings who were with him came and smote the Rephaim. And the kings are with him.
Why did the whole thing occur? What was the motivation for them attacking the 5 kings?
That was the way of the world, kings' imperialism.
What did they want to gain? Did they want to gain money?
Control, I don't know. Money, tributes, empire. I mean, that was normal, right? Genghis Khan, like that's what you did. Like,
They wanted a 5-state solution.
yeah. So in the 14th year, the 13th they rebelled. In the 14th year, I'm sorry, not for 13 years, making 25 years total, they rebelled. In the 14th year, after that 13-year period, came Kidl Omer and the kings were with him, and they smote the Rephaim that were living in
So
Asher.
there was a rebellion. So they already had control over the 5 kings, but then the 5 kings rebelled.
Lost kings, right? They for 13 years they lost control. They said Zuzim beham, and also they smote the Zuzim who lived in Ham. They said Amim, Shavik Kiryasayim, who lived in Shavik Kiryasayim. Hey, Rashi pasuk Hey. Of Abba Esay Shun in the 14th year. The 14th year of the rebellion came Kidl Omer because he was the most involved.
The word is maradu. And as that site, does that mean rebel or does that mean
Yes,
descend?
yes, rebel. Kidl Omer, because he was the Baal Hamaisa, since he was the most involved in the object of the rebellion, Nichnas B'Aviakar, he took matters in hand. The kings, these were the other 3 kings. Eila Shlosha Malachim. These were the other 3 kings. Zuzim, Him, Zamzumim. The Zumim, the kings, these were the other 3 kings. The Zuzim, they were the Zamzumim. Yep. Okay. Move along. Vav. Eis Hachari Baharam Seir. They also smote the Chori living in the mountain Seir. Ad El Paran, till El, the plain of Paran. Asham and Bar, that is by the wilderness. Rashi. Param, he smote them in their mountain. El Param, its meaning is, English translates it, the plain of Paran. I say, however, that El is not plain. Rather, the plain was called El. And of Mamre, Elone was its name. And of the Jordan, it was called Kikar. Meaning, some people say these words are just synonyms for plain. He says, no, they're the do you call it? What do you call a name like Yitzchak? Pronoun?
I
Not
don't
pronoun.
know that. I never had that school.
Proper
Proper
name.
name.
Proper name.
Yeah.
These are the proper names. And Shittim Avil. Avil Shittim. Chaim Baal God. Baal was his name. Kulam Miturgamim Meishar. But English just kind of streamlined it, all called them Meishar, means plain. Understand? So Onkelos wasn't being precise. He says he was right in the general topic. Rashi feels that these were actual proper names. Okay. Al Hamidbar by the desert. Eitz Lamidbar. Kimoy v'lov Mati Menashe. This meaning of Al is similar to the tribe of Menashe. Zion. How long is this?
Not too.
Not too long. V'yeshuvu v'yivar ein mishpat hi kadesh. They turned back and came to ein mishpat, that is kadesh. Ayakas kostei Amaleki, and they smote the entire fields of the Amaleki. The Games and also the Amiri, Hayesh bechatzotz and Tamar, that were dwelling in chatzotz and Tamar. Turned back, came to Ein Mishpat, and they smote the entire field. Wow. Ein Mishpat hi Kadesh. Ein Mishpat Kadesh. Al Shem Asid. This Ein Mishpat, the spring of Mishpat, was called Kadesh in the future. Here, I mean, it's not, I don't know if that was the name then. Later on, it's saying that would be Kadesh, what happens with Moshe. That Moshe is going to be judged. I'm sorry. Maybe it was called Kadesh. And Ein Mishpat is a futuristic name about the incident of Moshe being judged with the spring of the rocks, hitting the rock, which is Mei Meriva, the waters of contention. Onkelos translates it simply, Makom Shoy B'nei Amdina Miskab Shem L'chom Mishpat. Onkelos goes more simple. This was a judging meeting place, judgment meeting place for people to convene. Stay Amaleki, the field of Amaleki. Amalek wasn't born yet, just for the record. Amalek's a grandson of Esav. But again, it's called in the name of the future. I think it means that the way I understand it is, I think it says that wasn't the name now. The Torah's narrator is saying this is eventually became these places, Amaleki. Yeah, okay, doesn't say. Whatever, moving on. Ches. Then the king of Sidon, the king of Mor, the king of Adam, the king of Tzvaim, the king of Belo, that is Tor, they went out. They went to wage war. In the valley of Sidon. Rashi. Tes. So he had those 5 kings against these 4 kings. Rashi repeats their names, saying, even so, nitzchu amwatim, even though there were only 4, it keeps staying there 4. Like even you just count to see it's 4. Or you just say 4 and 5. Or 4. I'm going to say not 5, it's 4. Okay, clear. There was a 4 versus 5 battle. Like it's very weird that the Torah should be so explicit. It was, 4 versus 5. Okay, I mean, I would realize that. It wants to emphasize these 4 were powerhouses, and that's why they beat up the larger amount of kings, to show you how strong they were. Even so, Avram did not hesitate to go fight them. It's all getting up to the hero, the protagonist of our story, Avram. Yud. The valley of Siddim was full of clay pits. And when the king of Sidom And the king of Amorah fled. It was full of clay pits. They fled there and they fell into them like quicksand, I guess. Or some, I don't know, quicksand, just, clay pits. When he showed him Heranasu, while those who survived the pits fled to the mountains. The Eretz Beretz Chemer, full of clay pits. There are many pits there from where they took earth for making building clay. The Medrash Haggadah, the Medrash says that the clay was actually mixed inside the pits. So some say it was just pits that were empty. Others say it was like cement there.
Clay.
Would you die if you fall into cement? God forbid. Right? Clay. But a miracle happened to the king of Sodom that he survived there. God made a miracle. This wicked king of Sodom survived a miracle from a pit full of clay, to show that the skeptics that were saying that Avram never really was saved from the fiery furnace, they were skeptical. When they saw this king survived, they saw, you know what? Avram also retroactively must survive also.
Wow.
God is...
Hashem.
Yeah. Anyways, moving along. Haranasu, the rest fled to the mountains. Heranasu. Means to the mountain they fled. Now Rashi goes a little grammar Rashi. Let's buckle up. Hera is like, with a hey at the end, is like a prefix of lamed at the beginning. Very famous rule. Rashi mentioned it probably 10 times at least in the Torah. Kol teva shetzricha lamed b'tchilasa hitalaseh b'sofa. Any word that you want to say a prefix of to this place, a lamed at the beginning or a hey at the end works as well as a suffix.
Right.
Yesh chiluk ben hara lehahara. Sheva seveteva mezum kem lamed b'rishayna. Amen mezum kem lamed kuda padach tachta. Ari hera kimay lehar or kimay elhar enam first lezahar. Kol achnos asher masal tchila hey b'risham tev hahara oyamid bara misrain kimay elhar kimay elhar mashal esyar yidu first b'pash. Basically, to paraphrase, there's two ways you could write this. There's going to a specific mountain, or there's going to any mountain. They fled to any mountain, or they fled to a specific mountain, to the mountain. If it would have written Hehara with a hey at the beginning and a hey at the end, the hey at the end is representing the suffix of to. The hey at the beginning is making it a specific noun. But now in our case, it says only Hera. It's basically you have the suffix of the hey, which is a to, but it doesn't have the hey at the beginning to make it a specific, I would call it proper noun. Proper noun. But whatever. The point is, it's not specific place. It's any definitive. Okay, it's not a definitive noun. If the hey at the beginning would have made it a definitive noun, but it's missing that, so it means they fled to any mountain they can get their feet to.
Skak.
Okay. Next page, 26, Yud Aleph. The 4 kings were in, yeah, 11. The 4 kings took all the property of Sodom and Amorah and all its food, and they left. Yudvez. They took Lot and his wealth, Avram's nephew, and they left. And Lot was living in Sodom. Now that seems very redundant. We know Lot's in Sodom, and we just said they beat up Sodom, right? So why tell me Lot was where would he be, in China? You're talking about the war against Sodom, and they're taking all the money of Sodom. And you mentioned rich citizen Lot was all his property was confiscated. He was kidnapped. And by the way, Lot was living in Sodom. What we're talking about all the time. Rashi's going to say, the Torah is the Torah as narrator is pointing out Why was Lot punished with being kidnapped and confiscation of property? Because he chose to live in Sodom. That's what made him lose it. That's what caused the misfortune. Yud Gimel. The survivor came and told Avram the Ivri. He was dwelling then in the plain of Mamre, or the plain called Elon of Mamre, the Emori, and the brother of Eshkol. I'm sorry, Mamre was the brother of Eshkol, the brother of Aner, and Hein Bali Brisam. They were Avram's alliance, allies. Yud Gimel, the survivor came. According to the simple meaning, this is Og. Og, Paul Melchama. Og survived the war. As it's written, only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the rest of the Rephaim giants. And this is the remaining. This is the remaining that they did not, Amraphel did not kill. This is the remnant that Amraphel and his cohorts did not kill when they smote the Rephaim in Asher's Kanaim, as mentioned earlier. This is from Medrash Tanchuma. Medrash Bereshis Rabbah says it wasn't just any. So the first man, it's an Og who was a giant, who was just of the Rephaim giants, a survivor. The Medrash of Bereshis Rabbah says it's Og of the Ark, years, old man. He was a giant who survived the flood of the flood.
There's only one Og, right?
Apparently,
how can that be? How can he? If everybody was annihilated, how could he survive?
listen to this.
Nace.
This is the rest. This means the rest of the Rephaim. We talk about Og later on when the Jews enter Israel.
Right, but I don't understand how there could be anybody who survived the flood.
Listen, let me finish, and then
I'm
we'll
going to tell you probably.
And the Nephilim were
If
on
he
the
doesn't
were on the earth. Miskavin Shiharig Avram, he says so. This Og, whoever he was, whether he was a giant who survived the war, or he was a giant that predates back to the time of the Nephilim giants before the flood, he was the one surviving giant of the flood. He is the guy who's talked about here. And what was his intention?
He's the guy who what? I didn't hear your words.
Survived the flood.
Okay.
Regardless, whoever he is the one here who is the survivor, coming to Avraham, telling him that your nephew was captured. And he has bad intentions. He wanted Avram, good-hearted Avram, to go to war and die so then Og could marry beautiful Sarah.
You got to be kidding. You've got to be joking me.
So the answer to your question, how could he survive?
Yes.
As I was taught in Cheder, and I didn't look at this. It's probably in the Tauber Chumash. You could probably find more details, different opinions. That Og was allowed. He repented at the last minute from the generation of the flood, and he was allowed to dwell on the roof of the ark.
Now, the question is,
It works.
That's what I was told as a child.
I
That
learned
works.
to,
That works.
Alan, I learned to, that whether it's the roof or the side, but the water was bubbling, hot. So how did he survive? The water around him was cool.
Right.
So he survived.
Okay. Ivri, Avram the Ivri. He's called Ivri because he came Me'aver HaNahar. He came from the other side of the Euphrates River. The Nahar for us. Bali Bris Avram. They were Avram's allies. Avram's allies who formed a covenant with him. Yudalid. Yishma Avram Kinish Ba'achiv. when Avram heard that his relative had been captured, he armed his 318 trainees. Avram heard that his relative had been captured. He armed his 318 trainees. Yelidei those that are born of his household. 318 of them. Yirdev Adon, and he gave chase to the 4 kings as far as Dan. What's going on here? Vayarak.
Yarak means what?
Vayarak is an unusual word. So Rashi says,
Unusual word alert.
Unusual word. Yeah, you're getting my lingo.
Wow.
Because certain Rashis, are kind of categories of what type of Rashis they are, right? There's like a grammar Rashi. There's an unusual word alert Rashi. There's a context Rashi. So unusual word alert Rashi is this one. He quotes Unkeles v'zarez. It means he armed them. He fitted them with armor, with weapons. We see similarly, Varikoisia acharechem cherev, is dayim b'charbi alechem, orek charbi v'chen horek chanesagar. We see similar language of a yorek, meaning to arming somebody. Chanichov, his trainees.
Rabbi, if I could interrupt you for just a second, and I apologize if I wasn't listening carefully enough, but did you mention that Og, that's Midrash, that's from Midrash, and that and that the idea is that from the Midrash that Og hung on to the ark, and that Noah fed him through a hole. Okay, and so that's how he survived. But by the way, I think that Copilot has an excellent comment on this, and it says these stories are rich in metaphor and are not meant to be taken as historical accounts. They reflect the imaginative and interpretive traditions of Jewish scholarship, often used to explore deeper spiritual or moral themes.
Who's the source of that statement, that categorical statement?
That's Copilot.
But Copilot, no source?
No source.
Midrash, by the way, I want to point, Gary, if you have time, you could do us all a favor. Midrash is cryptic, and there is it's a fine line between what is metaphor and what is story embellishment or story details that are true. Zvi Freeman has, I think, 4 classes or articles on Chabad.org about Midrash, about this. I don't know it. I'm not sure, but I think here you'd have to say it was not just metaphor because well, he's here, he's a guy. It's metaphor. What's he doing here? Like how does he survive via just a metaphor? So, anyways, I don't know. But if you want to do, if you have some time, you want to do a little deep dive into Midrash analysis, type in Zvi Freeman, Midrash, Chabad.org, and you'll come to a series of articles. I know he dealt with this once. Chanichov, his trainees. He trained them in mitzvahs. It's written in the singular, Chanicho, because some say he only trained one guy.
That's right. Eliezer has the gematria of 318 if you add it up.
Yeah, anyways. In general, chinuch. What does chinuch mean?
Where are you reading?
I'm asking you, what does chinuch mean? Anybody? Survey says. Education. But if you get more specific, it means introductory education.
How do you spell chinuch?
Ches Yud Nun Vav final Chaf. The point he's saying is that chinuch means his trainees. Is a good word. It's someone that he trained. He entered. Well, not school kids. More here, it's matter his. They can be adults. Yeah, exactly. Chen chanoch lanar. We see the term educate. It's not just educate. It's educate in a introduction, like not introduction, but like introducing and seeing through the student. Chanukas Mizbeach. It means initiation is the best word, I think. Initiation of the altar. Chanukas Abayis, initiation of the house.
Rededication.
Dedication, but better than dedication is like you want to put it as initiation. You want to like you're bringing it to to
Giving it a diploma.
well, it's a diploma. I think you're
In the beginning,
you're giving the education. You're training. Balaz couldn't look ancillary in the old French. Instruction is the word. Instruction. Initiate in old Rashi man's they're different when they have initiate. Actually, interesting.
Rashi
initiation-
trying to reach his locals as well.
Yeah. By the way, you should know many non-Jewish secular French scholars. They know a lot of old French words only from Rashi. A lot of sources for because modern French I think is very different than old French, and scholars of old French a lot of them use Rashi as a source. But yeah, Rashi is fascinating because he wasn't just a Torah scholar; he was a teacher, and he would include the spoken tongue of his locale in his thing. It's fascinating. Which is what we have to be. We have to be teachers.
amen.
We can't just be scholars.
Amen.
Shmona Asar, 318. A rabbi say that was Eliezer. It's actually a code. He had one big student whose name is Eliezer. And the Eliezer's gematria is 318.
Mr. Allen.
Yeah, it works. It works. I checked it many times.
So big questions on the bottom. This is actually a good footnote on page 6, footnote 61. That, wait a second.
Wait a second.
Rashi's into straightforward meaning, right? He likes to be a straightforward. Pshutai shel mikra. The most straightforward reading as you can stay to. Right? So it says 318, the people he took. A militia of 318 people. And we're like, no, it wasn't 318. It was one. He had one ninja warrior called Eliezer, whose gematria is 318. Why would you pick that? Right? Why would Rashi give a more convoluted interpretation when a nice, simple reading is he had 318 people, his militia, and that's his little band of soldiers.
But
So,
he used the singular, like you say.
but why? So, okay, but he could. The point is, Rashi typically would not pick a more convoluted interpretation, and the reason he did pick it says in the bottom, Rabbeinu Bechaya says that he actually had 318, but they were not as pure of sin as Eliezer. And Eliezer is only one pure of sin. So Aaron said, if anyone has sin, please leave. Because you won't be successful. You won't have the merits to be saved in war. So they left.
Wow.
And he was left with Eliezer, who was in place of the 318.
Wow.
The Gur Arya says, the Maharal of Prague says, that there was actually both Eliezer and 318 total. But to show you that perfect number of 318 equal, let's say Eliezer was the general or the lieutenant. His name equals 318. Coincidence? I think not. The only reason the small militia of 318 was successful wasn't Eliezer's merit. I like that. It's a very Rebbe, like you try to reconcile stuff. Done, as far as done. Done is where, why did he go past done? There his strength flagged because he saw prophetically that his descendants will in the future erect an idolatrous calf there. See Malachim 1, 12, 29. All right, Tesvav. He and his servants divided themselves against the four kings, even at night, and he smote them, and he chased them, ad chova till chova, asher mismala Damascus, which is left north of Damascus. Rashi, he divided. The simple meaning would mean you have to rearrange the verse to read by Yichalek hu vavadav aleim laila. He divided himself and his servants against them at night. You have to rearrange the verse sometimes. In the way of pursuers who divide up to chase the pursuees who are fleeing in all directions. Yeah? Laila. Laila at night. This means that even after dark, he did not refrain from pursuing them. This means that even after dark, he did not refrain from pursuing them. The Aggadic explanation, however, is Vayichalak means that night was divided into two. During its first half, a miracle happened to him, and its second half was reserved for the miracle at midnight in Mitzrayim.
What does that mean?
So it means like this. Big miracles in history. One was for Avram, now, in the first part of the first half of the night. But in the second half of night, you know what happened in history?
Yeah, that was we left his we left.
So he's saying that's so the Medrash is saying that. So the simple reading is Vayichalek aleim laila, that he split up after them even at night. So then even at night, he kept following them, chasing them. The deeper homiletical meaning is the night itself was divided. Not that he was divided, he divided his group, and the night was divided.
Wow.
Part one of the night for this miracle of Avram beating the kings. Part second half of the night is in the future when the Exodus happens. They leave it at the miracle of the plague of the firstborn, and they leave in the second half of the night. Okay. Ad Chova, till Chova. There's no place called Chova, Rashi says. It's a nickname. It's really done because we said he went as far as done before. So why is it called Chova? Because that place of done became a Chova place. Chova means a incriminated place. A place they become guilty for the sin of the done people serve in the time of the prophets and the time of the Shoftim, they serve idols there. Yod Zayin, Tesayin.
Vayakim, plural or singular?
Which word? Vayakim?
Yeah.
Singular.
Singular.
He.
Okay.
King General Cornwall.
Yeah.
Tezayin. Vayajer is called a chush. He brought back all the property he brought back all the property. The Gamis and also Lot, his brother, his relative, Ruchushai and his property. He returned. The Gam as Anoshim and also the women and the rest of the people. After he returned from the king of Sodom went out towards him after he returned. As he finished smiting the Kedlomer and his bad kings with him. They went to the valley of the Siddim. Emek Shaveh, the Shaveh Valley, which is the Emek Hamelech, which is the valley of the king. Rashi will explain these peculiar words. Emek Shaveh. Emek Shaveh, the Shaveh Valley. That's the name. As Uncle says, Lamesher Mafna. Uncle translates a little different. He says an open valley. It was Shaveh, it was like a very equalized. It was flat. It was totally flat from any trees, any kind of obstacle. Really flat. Emek Hamelech. It was used as the king's valley. What's a king's valley? Basically, Sad Malka, the king's expanse. A ris is a stretch of land. Ris is a measurement which is 30 kanim, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And it was set aside for the king's sport. I guess he was, for hunting or something, or like
polo.
What?
Polo.
What's the thing you shoot the birds? What's that called?
Skeet or something.
Skeet. No, skeet.
Yeah, I think it's ski.
Oh, yeah.
Ski shooting.
Something.
It was something like that.
There's a clay.
Skeet shooting for sure.
Ski shooting. So some type of hunt. He had a nice, golf course,
Level.
level field. Medrash Haggadah. Emek shusham kol umayis yimlichu es avram aleim l'nisi aleim l'katzim. But the Medrash actually has another. That was more the simple meaning. Medrash has a deeper, a more detailed version that's saying that this is a place after this miracle of Avram defeating the kings. Avram, all the nations of the world, hushavu, they were unanimous, and himlichu, they made Avram a king over them, as a prince of God and leader over them.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting how today's world, you could learn so much from Avram. Like if Israel would do what they have to do, later on, all these obnoxious nations in Europe and others that are, condemning them, if they would totally defeat Iran and and keep control over,
All these nations acquiesced in our destruction.
they'd be happy. They'd be thankful after the fact. Like here, Avram came and with no chance, and yet he defeated them, and then everybody's thankful. Thank you for taking care of the neighborhood bullies. Yudches. Malki Tzedek Melech Shalem. Malki Tzedek, the king of Shalem. Hotzi lechem v'yoyin, brought out bread and wine. V'hu chohen el elyon. He was a priest to the supreme God. Yudches, Malki Tzedek. Malki Tzedek. The Aggadic explanation is that he was Shem, the son of Noach. Lechem v'yoyim, you have bread and wine. This is what you serve to people, the battle weary. Malki Tzedek thereby showed Avram that he bore no ill will for having killed his descendants, because these were descendants of Shem. They're bad. Midrash Agad, the Midrash explains that this is to hint that later on Avram's kids will get the mitzvahs of the temple and to bring karbanos with flour bread offerings and wine libations.
Wow.
Yudas. He blessed Avram. He said, Shem, Malki Tzedek said to Avram, Baruch Avram, El Elyon, blessed is Avram before the supreme God, Konesh Shemaris, the possessor, the creator of heaven and earth. Possessor. Konesh Shemaris means Oseh Shemaris, the possessor, that through his making them, well, he said it's really the same thing. The maker is the owner of heaven and earth. The supreme God has shown himself to be the source of blessing. Asher migin tzarecha b'yadecha, that he delivered your adversaries into your hand. Vayitin lo maaser mikol, Avram then gave himself a tenth of everything he had.
Explain that to me, please.
Supreme God, he continues, the blessing. Supreme God showed himself to be a source of blessing and delivered your adversaries into your hand. End of the blessing. Avram then gave him a tenth of everything he had.
He gave it to Melchizedek.
Correct. Rashi. Asher Migain, that he delivered. Hisker, delivered. Magencha, Yisrael. Avram, that's actually Rashi, because it's ambiguous, Rashi points it out. Exactly.
There's nothing that says that Abraham,
Rashi adds, read Rashi, Vayitin Loi. Who's giving to who? Who's on first and what's on second, right? He's giving to who? Avram's giving to him.
Since Melchizedek was a priest, but then
right, nice and call. This practically being a tenth to a priest is an age-old practice.